My name is Alara. I'm 32 years old, and I never imagined that grief could feel lonelier than death itself. On the day I buried my husband, the man who had carried me through storms and held me steady when life tore me apart, my family wasn't there. Not my parents, not my siblings, not even my so-called best friend. The pews sat empty while across town laughter and champagne filled the air at my sister's engagement party. The night before, my cousin sneered as she brushed past me. An engagement is once in a lifetime. Funerals. They can wait. Those words cut into me like broken glass, and the worst part was knowing she wasn't the only one who thought that way. I told myself it was just bad timing that someone would walk in late, embarrassed but repentant. But as the minutes dragged, as the pastor's voice echoed against the cold stained glass windows, I faced the truth. I had been abandoned deliberately. I remember gripping the coffin until my fingers ached, tearing the folded program in my hands. Strangers, neighbors, a few co-workers of his, offered hollow condolences before slipping away to their cars. And me, I stood alone, watching the earth swallow the last piece of the only man who had ever truly loved me. The silence was suffocating. My phone buzzed in my purse, one message glowing against the darkness of the screen. "We need to talk. Call me now." Then 36 missed calls. Their timing was as cruel as their absence. Something inside me shifted that day. Grief fused with betrayal, hardening into something cold and sharp. I whispered a vow into the chilled air. They chose their side, and soon they'll learn what it feels like to lose everything they take for granted. I didn't answer their calls, not one. I let the buzzing suffocate itself in silence. When the final shovel of dirt hit the grave, I drove home to an empty house that still smelled faintly of lilies. I sank into the couch numb, listening to the phantom sound of champagne glasses clinking across town. They hadn't just skipped his funeral, they had chosen her celebration over my devastation. Hours later, the doorbell rang, over and over, pounding like a demand. When I opened it, my mother stood there, still in her silk dress from the party, her hair pinned perfectly, the smell of champagne clinging to her. Not a trace of grief in her eyes. "We need to talk," she said, her voice clipped and businesslike. I whispered, my voice breaking, "You missed his funeral." She blinked, annoyed. "Sweetheart, it was unfortunate timing. Your sister's engagement was important. You'll understand one day." I let out a bitter laugh, sharp and hollow. "Important. You're telling me champagne and cake outweighed burying the man who treated me better than this family ever has?" Her face hardened. "Don't be dramatic. Life moves forward. Dwelling on death won't change anything." My chest burned, but beneath the pain I saw it something behind her words. Not guilt, not sorrow, but fear. And then she said it, the line that twisted my grief into rage. "We need to settle some matters now that he's gone. Certain assets shouldn't be left in your hands alone." Her eyes flicked past me, scanning the hallway of my home. She wasn't here for me. She wasn't here for him. She was here for what he left behind. That was when the silence between us snapped like a wire pulled too tight. I stepped back and forced my voice calm. "Come in, Mom," I said. She exhaled in relief, mistaking my composure for surrender. But inside me, something colder was already taking shape. If she thought I was going to roll over, then she didn't know the daughter she had created. She sat on my sofa as if it were hers, her silk dress rustling. "Your husband left behind assets, the house, the savings the company shares. It isn't wise for you to handle them alone. Your father and I think it's best if everything is redistributed." That word slammed into me. Redistributed. To who, I asked, though I already knew. "To your sister, of course. She's starting her new life. She'll need support. You'll be fine. You're strong." Strong. That word had always been their excuse. Strong meant I didn't need care. Strong meant they could strip me bare and I would survive. I leaned back, my voice even. "So you skipped my husband's funeral to toast her engagement, and now you've come here to ask for his legacy too." She shifted uncomfortably but held her chin high. "Don't twist this. It's family duty. Don't be selfish." Selfish. Another knife to the chest. But I didn't flinch. Instead, I smiled politely. I'll think about it. Her face brightened instantly, relief spreading like poison. She touched my arm. Good girl. I knew you'd come around. I walked her to the door, her perfume lingering in the air. The second the door clicked shut, I whispered into the silence. Not a chance. They had abandoned me at my darkest hour. Now they were about to learn what abandonment really feels like. The night after my mother's visit, I couldn't sleep. I wandered through the house barefoot, trailing my fingers along the furniture that still carried his warmth, his presence. His favorite chair still had the faint imprint of his body. The books he had marked with notes sat on the shelf untouched since the hospital. Every corner whispered of him. And all I could hear in my mother's voice was not grief, not compassion, but calculation. When I finally collapsed into bed, I clutched his old flannel shirt like a lifeline. I whispered into the fabric, "They didn't come for you, but I'll protect what you left me. I promise." My tears stained the collar, and I swore that if my family wanted a war, I'd give them one. The following morning, my father called. I let it ring until the voicemail picked up. His voice was sterner than my mother's, as if authority would undo betrayal. "Alara, this isn't about you. It's about family. You're too emotional to handle finances alone. We'll be over tonight to discuss redistribution. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." I slammed the phone down, my breath ragged. Too emotional. That had been his refrain all my life. Too emotional to be taken seriously. Too emotional to be trusted with decisions. Too emotional to be worthy of the same love they poured endlessly into my sister. And now too emotional to keep my husband's legacy. But beneath that fury, a memory stirred. A night years ago, sitting in the attic with my husband digging through old boxes of family papers. He had found a file that looked odd photocopies of my grandfather's will. At the time, I didn't understand it. But he had frowned and said, "Something's off here, Alara. These numbers don't add up. Your parents might not be telling you everything." I had brushed it off, too tired to dig into the past. Now those words burned in me like prophecy. Something long buried was waiting to be uncovered. I dug into the cabinet where my husband kept our important documents, searching through folders until my fingers landed on a brown envelope marked in his handwriting, "For Alara, if anything happens to me." My chest constricted. With trembling hands, I opened it. Inside were photocopies, receipts, and notes in his neat handwriting. He had been investigating my family behind my back. He had known before I even admitted it to myself that they weren't just neglectful, they were dangerous. Among the papers was a copy of my grandfather's original will, leaving me not my parents, not my sister, the majority of his estate. But in the official records my parents had shown me years ago, my name had been missing entirely. My breath caught. My husband must have discovered that my parents had manipulated the documents, erasing me from what was rightfully mine. And now, with him gone, they thought they could do it again. I pressed the papers to my chest, sobbing, not just from grief but from vindication. My husband hadn't just loved me, he had believed in me, protected me even in silence. He had left me the truth tucked away like a weapon waiting for the right moment. By the time evening fell and the doorbell rang, I was ready. My parents swept in as if they owned the place, my sister trailing behind in her engagement ring, her smile smug and venomous. My father wasted no time. "We'll take the house and liquidate the shares. Avery will handle the paperwork. You'll keep a small stipend. It's fair." I slid the envelope across the table. "Funny. Because according to Grandpa's real will, everything you're trying to take was mine all along." The color drained from their faces. My mother's hand shook as she grabbed at the papers, her voice rising. "Where did you get this?" "My husband," I said softly, my voice steady for the first time in days. "He knew. He always knew what you were capable of. And now so do I." The room fell silent, the weight of my words sinking in. My sister's smugness cracked into fear. My father's authority crumbled into anger. My mother's mask slipped into panic. And I sat there finally with the upper hand. Inside me, grief still clawed, but alongside it something else bloomed: vindication. They thought they could erase me. They thought they could bury me under silence and selfishness. But now I had proof, and I was ready to use it. My father's face darkened as he skimmed through the papers, his jaw tightening with every line. He slammed the envelope back on the table, his voice low and dangerous. You don't understand what you're dealing with, Alara. These things are complicated. Wills change. Families make sacrifices. I leaned forward, my voice steady. Sacrifices. Grandpa left this for me, and you stole it. You stole from your own daughter, and now you want to steal from your dead son-in-law, too. My mother reached across the table, her voice trembling. Sweetheart, listen to reason. We only did what we thought was best for the family. You've always been strong. You don't need as much. Avery. She needs help starting her life. Don't be selfish. There it was again. Selfish. The word they had thrown at me since childhood whenever I wanted something of my own. When I wanted attention, when I wanted love, when I begged for fairness. Now they used it to justify betrayal. I stood, my hands braced against the table. You skipped my husband's funeral. You erased me from Grandpa's will. And now you come here asking for his legacy as if I'm nothing. If anyone here is selfish, it's you. My sister finally broke her silence, her voice sharp. Don't pretend you're some victim, Alara. You've always been dramatic. No wonder no one came to that funeral. You make everything about you. Her words hit like shards of glass, but instead of breaking, something inside me hardened. I straightened, my eyes burning into hers. You're right, Avery. No one came. And that told me everything I needed to know about this family. You don't care about me. You never did. And I'm done begging for scraps of your love. The room went still. My father opened his mouth, but I raised a hand. Leave, all of you, and don't come back. My mother's eyes widened, tears spilling down her cheeks. Alara, you can't mean that. We're family. Family. I laughed bitterly. Family doesn't abandon you at a graveside. Family doesn't erase you from a will. Family doesn't show up in silk dresses smelling of champagne the day after your husband is buried to ask for his money. Whatever you are, you're not my family anymore. For a moment, no one moved. Then my father stood, his voice cold. You'll regret this. When you're alone, when the grief consumes you, you'll come crawling back, and we won't be here. I looked him in the eye, my voice unwavering. That's the point. They left in silence, the door slamming behind them. The house shook, but I stood still, my chest heaving, my hands trembling. I was alone, truly, completely alone. And yet for the first time I felt something like freedom. That night I spread the documents across the table, tracing my husband's handwriting, his quiet notes in the margins. He had given me more than love. He had given me a weapon, a shield, a chance to reclaim what was mine. My grief was still raw, my heart still bleeding, but underneath it all, a fire had begun to burn. In the weeks that followed, I met with a lawyer. We pored over the will, the forged records, the proof of what my parents had done. Every piece was another stone in the wall I was building to protect myself, to protect his legacy, to protect the little girl inside me who had been silenced for far too long. I didn't answer their calls. I didn't read their messages. I heard through distant relatives that they were furious, that they were painting me as greedy, ungrateful, cold. But I no longer cared. For once, I wasn't living for their approval. I was living for him, for me, for the promise I whispered into the fabric of his shirt, I will protect what you left me. And deep down, I knew this wasn't over. They weren't the type to give up quietly. The storm was only beginning. The storm arrived sooner than I expected. It started with whispers from neighbors how my parents were telling anyone who would listen that I had manipulated them, that I had tricked them into signing documents while they were distraught. They painted me as a vulture circling grief, as a daughter so obsessed with control that I would betray my own blood. The same people who hadn't shown their faces at my husband's funeral now clucked their tongues at me in grocery aisles, their pitying looks dripping like poison. At first I tried to ignore it, but then the letters came. A thick envelope from a lawyer in my hometown demanding I release the assets for the good of the family. I sat at the kitchen table, the letter shaking in my hands, and for the first time since they had left my house, I laughed. A sharp, hollow sound. They had skipped a funeral, but found the time and money to hire legal help. That told me everything about their priorities. My attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Claire, spread the papers across her desk, her lips curling in disdain. Their case is weak. The original will prove your claim. If they want to drag this into court, it'll only expose what they did. She leaned forward, her voice low. Alara, this is your chance to put an end to their control once and for all. I nodded, but inside, a part of me trembled. I didn't want to air the rot of my family in public, yet maybe that was the only way to finally cut free from the chains they'd bound me with since childhood. The first hearing was a blur of cold benches and sterile air. My father sat across the room, his jaw tight, my mother's eyes swollen from manufactured tears. My sister clutched her fiancé's hand like she was the victim in all of this. When their lawyer accused me of exploiting my parents, my hands clenched into fists. But Claire stood tall, her voice sharp as a blade. She laid out every receipt, every forged record, every line of my grandfather's original will. Piece by piece, she dismantled the lies they had wrapped around me. Then she produced the letter my husband had written, the one he had left for me in that brown envelope. His words filled the courtroom, steady and clear. If you are reading this, Alara, it means I couldn't protect you in person. But know this, the truth is on your side. Do not let them take from you what was always meant to be yours. My chest ached, tears spilling freely as his voice seemed to echo through time. The courtroom was silent, every eye fixed on me. For once, I wasn't the invisible daughter. I was the woman standing in the wreckage, holding the truth like a torch. My father's mask cracked then. His voice, usually commanding, faltered. That letter could be fake. How do we know it was really him? But even as he said it, I saw the flicker of doubt in his eyes. He knew, he always knew my husband was smarter, steadier, more honorable than he could ever be. The judge adjourned without a ruling that day, but I walked out with my head high. My parents glared, my sister hissed under her breath, but I didn't flinch. Because no matter how long the fight lasted, I knew I had something stronger than their lies. I had proof. I had his words. I had the strength they never gave me. That night, I sat on the porch, the cool air brushing my skin. I looked up at the stars and whispered, "I'm doing it, love. I'm fighting back. For you. For me." And in the quiet, for the first time since the funeral, I felt a glimmer of peace. But peace doesn't last long in a war. And I knew my family wasn't finished. They had already stolen my childhood, tried to steal my future, and now they wanted to crush me in the present. But I wasn't the same girl anymore. This time I would not break. If my story touched something in you, if you've ever been abandoned by the very people who were supposed to love you, know this: you are not alone. Your strength may be the very thing they fear, but it is also the thing that will set you free. Please, if my words resonate, like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe so we can continue building this space together. And tell me in the comments, have you ever been betrayed by your own family? I want to hear your story.